With VCT Rostermania winding down, it's time to look at some of these VCT Americas teams and talk about what are their goals for next year. Obviously, every team is trying to build a roster to be able to win tournaments, but of course you can't always have a team at that level. So with the rosters that have been built, what are people thinking behind the scenes? So today we're taking a look at every single VCT Americas team that will be playing in 2026 and talking about each team's expectations and ranking them as I see fit. So this is the board we have today. So we have a bunch of categories that we will be putting each team into. Obviously at the very top is win a Masters or Champs, so win an international trophy. Obviously every team wants to be at that point, but again, as I said earlier, you have to set your goals realistically. Right below that is do well internationally. So maybe not win a tournament, but show promise for the future. This is a category I would probably put all the teams that would have the goal of making it to every single international and also performing to a high level at them. Right below that is make an international tournament, so qualify for either a Masters or a Champs, but maybe you're not expecting them to make it to every single one. There only is so many spots, so it is hard to qualify for all of them. But this is for teams that have built a team with that in mind, of getting to those international tournaments. Right below that is do well internationally, so teams that have the goal of staying consistently good in their region, teams that at their highest peak could maybe make an international, but overall just want to do well in their own region, show promise for the future. That's kind of what I'm thinking for these categories. And at the very bottom, I put do literally anything. This is reserved for teams that haven't done much of anything at the tier 1 level, either throughout their history or in recent memory. So there will be some teams that will probably go in this category, but we'll see how many. So let's get started, shall we? We will be starting with the Latin American teams. I'm doing this by section of like the regions in the Americas. So starting with Crew, I think overall, I think their main goal is probably make an international tournament. I'm a little bit tempted to say do well internationally because Crew is able to make it to international tournaments, but they haven't done well at any of them in quite some time. They of course had a streak of making it to every single champions, but that did end this year. But I don't know if the roster that they put together, at least what we know about it so far, is necessarily going to be consistent enough to make it to every single one. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna put them down here, put them in make an international tournament, qualify for at least one tournament, maybe champs, and hopefully have a little dark horse run there. But overall Crew, I think, is probably in there. Don't know what I see my personal expectations for this team right now, but we will see. Moving on, we have Leviatan. Now, this is a team that made the roster decisions pretty early in the offseason. They have a pretty young crop of talent, bringing up a lot of players from their academy team, as well as keeping the veteran in Kane to be this team's IGL. They have some great talent. They have Spikes in on their team, as well as Sato, who showed a lot of promise by the end of the year. And after a pretty disappointing Stage 1 and Stage 2, they were basically around this category. They were doing pretty well regionally. So I'm going to say with hopefully some improvement and, you know, not having a terrible loss at end of playoffs, I would say putting them here is probably realistic. Again, I'm trying to think of what the team specifically are thinking with what I'm specifically thinking. I'm not sure if I think Leviatan is going to make it international. Personally, I don't know if with the talent that they have on that team, I think they can go on a decent run. So I think for my personal expectations, I'd probably put them down here, but I think for the fan base and for the team in general, like management and whatnot, they're probably hoping that this is where they are. Of course, every team is going to be hoping they make international tournaments, but again, just looking at it realistically. Moving on to some Brazilian teams, we have Loud. I think Loud is going to be the first one in this category. I don't look at the roster that we've heard about from Loud, which I don't think is complete at this time. While they do have some pretty interesting pieces, such as Luke Show, who showed incredible promise in both Stage 1 and Stage 2. I don't see the rest of the rumored roster that hasn't been fully announced yet as something that's really going to blow people away, and I think that they know that. I think this is a year where they want to do well in the Americas League, and if they stay in the partnership program, which I would assume Loud probably does unless they really just start to cheap out, I think for them it's smart to have the goal of doing well in the Americas, not necessarily making the international tournaments, but developing your young talent to hopefully make one in the future. Moving on, we got Furia. In Furia, yeah, they're going straight. They're going straight down in here. Just do literally anything, Furia, I think should be the goal. They've had just a terrible team for at least the past 2 years. In 2023, they had their moments, but weren't necessarily that good either. I think this team really just needs to find anything like a win, a few wins. I don't think they had a single win in 2025 aside from the very start of kickoff, which wasn't the roster that they had for the rest of the year because their entire roster missed the start of kickoff because of visa issues. Now, visa issues have plagued this organization for the entirety of 2025, which I could say that like can't be entirely blamed on the team, but I don't know, like there's a lot of teams that are at least able to get their players through the visa process quicker than Furia has. So I really don't know what's going to happen there. But they have some interesting pieces. Basic, he has to learn more English to be able to be on the starting roster, apparently. They have players like Qualanoob, Artsin. I mean, there's some interesting pieces there, but I don't see them doing that well internationally. I still think that the team they have is probably going to be one of the worst, if not the worst team in the Americas. So I think the goal for them is to just be relevant in any way, shape, or form. Maybe upset a few teams, maybe be a dark horse to make playoffs, but I don't know, man. I think this is kind of just a throwing in the towel of Furia. Moving on, we have MIBR, and I mean, you don't build a team with Ospas and Zekken on it and not expect to win a Masters or a Champions. This team on paper looks absolutely dynamite. Now, we have seen super teams fall before, and I do have a lot of question marks about this team. Is this team going to have the chemistry to be able to take it all the way? Yes, they do have a lot of the roster that was on the 2024 Leviatan team, 3 players from that team, and then you add Zekken as well as Verno as the IGL. And the Leviatan team got top 3 at Champions 2024, so there is that built-in chemistry there. But can you repeat that success? I think they can, but I do have questions about both Tex and Mazzino being on this team. Are they going to be able to bounce back from relatively down years respectively? Is Verno going to be able to continue his strong run as the IGL by the end of the year? Or are we going to see more of what we saw from his IGLing in Stage 2, where there was definitely a lot of improvement needed? He is a young IGL playing with a lot of experienced players, so he should have a lot of help in that front, and he performed very well at Champs individually. So I think there's a lot of good things here for sure. Zekken, of course, coming in, being the controller player. If they play double duelist comps, then man, this team could absolutely just cook people just based off of skill alone. And I do assume that they're going to be playing a fair amount of those double duelist comps. Yes, Zekken probably playing controller from what we've heard, but he will probably be flexing to, say, a Neon, and then Ospas can stay comfortable on his Jets or his Waylay as he was playing. So this MIBR team does have a lot of good things going for them, a lot of options as well with their compositions, and yeah, this team is built to win an international tournament. You don't pick up those players if you don't expect to win one, so we will see if they end up getting to that goal. Moving on, we have Envy. Now, Envy, I think, could go a few different places here. Honestly, I think Envy is going to be a really good team next year. I think with 2Game, that was a situation of they went on a really good run during that Ascension tournament. Then during the actual VCT season, they couldn't play their best player until Stage 2. So that obviously handicapped them. And then there was internal drama and like their IGL getting kicked off after like 1 game in Stage 1. Just a lot of things that went pretty bad for 2Game overall. Envy, I do think, has a very good structure, a very strong Tier 2 team that, yes, will be losing their own best player in Kane Zera. At least arguably that's their best player. They also have Ion not being able to join the roster as well. He is 16. So there is definitely some question marks when it comes to that, and maybe it could go the same way as 2Game. But I think you bring in Kesnet, and I think they still don't have a 5th person, and Jonah P just became available. I want to will this into existence. I want Jonah P on Envy. I want that so bad. We'll see what ends up happening there, or if they get a different 5th player, but where are the expectations at? I think a fair place to put them would be to make an international tournament. I think that's what they want to do. It is going to be tough to maintain their spot if they go back to the original Ascension rules. Yes, there's a lot changing in 2027, so they're technically not doing Ascension in 2026, so they won't have to defend their spot. But we don't really know the full direction of Ascension in Tier 2, and maybe it's announced like midway through the year that Envy or like the teams that don't go as far as the other Ascension team end up having to do what they did this year, where you have to fight for your spot if you like just barely miss out on champions. And maybe those teams might have to do what teams in 2025 did, where they had to fight for their spot if the other Ascension team went farther than them. So with Envy having to compete with G2 for that spot, if that ends up being the case, well, that's a pretty big uphill battle. But I do think that Envy is going to be a very dangerous team. Don't think they're going to be better than G2. G2 is still probably going to be the best team in the Americas, but I do think it's going to be a really strong team. They have a lot of good things going for them. I think making an international should be their goal. I think they they have the talent to be able to make one. I think that should be their goal. But hey, maybe they have higher aspirations. Moving on, we have Evil Geniuses. Now this one is kind of a tough one. I'm kind of tempted to put them in do literally anything because they kind of haven't been relevant since 2023 when they had that very good roster that won champs. Potter's coaching seems to not be as valuable as it used to be. I still think she's a very good coach, but things just haven't looked as, lightning in a bottle since that 2023 win. So it's been a bit of a long time for Evil Geniuses since they've done anything. But I think overall I'm going to put them in do well regionally. That should be the goal for them, in my opinion. Just do well in the Americas, maybe get a little dark horse run going. But I don't really see them qualifying for any internationals, and I don't know if they expect them to either. But I could be wrong, but that's where I think they deserve to be. They're going through a lot of changes. I don't know if they have a set roster. It's passing on me what the rumors are with them right now, but they are going through quite a bit of turnover. No more Ye, no more Icy. Okeanos has apparently joined the team. I think the news was, they picked up a few Vietnamese players. Now it's starting to kind of come back to me. I forget the name of the other one, but they're keeping Supermen. They have Okeanos coming in. Yeah, there's some decent talent on this roster, so they do have a chance to do well regionally. Are they going to make it international? I do not think so. Moving on, we have Energy. Well, considering they just won champions, I would say the goal is to do that again and maybe win a Masters this time. Maybe get Ethan a Masters trophy, because he doesn't have a Masters trophy. He does have the best trophy in Valorant 2 times. He does have 2 champs trophies, but hey, maybe he wants a Masters now. So that should be the goal. Adding Kiko could honestly make the team better overall. It is kind of debatable who's better, Kiko or Som. What I will say is I think Kiko has a higher ceiling but doesn't have as much experience as Som. So I think at Som's peak, Som has been the better player, but I think with Kiko coming in, that does give Energy a bit of a different look. Obviously, they did just do well at the Red Bull Homeground event. They didn't win. They did lose to G2 in the grand final, but overall, they still have just some amazing, incredible players on that team. Mata should have a very good year in 2026. I would expect him to. Ethan should continue a strong run as an IGL. Bonkar looks like maybe the best coach in the Americas. Brock and Scuba are only going to get better, and Kiko should be a very dangerous weapon for them. So yeah, the expectation, the goal for this team should be win an international tournament. Moving on, we have 100 Thieves. Now, 100 Thieves going through a rebuild of their own. However, they have kept 2 players from last year's roster in Cryocells as well as Asuna. So Asuna is remaining on this team. He must have some kind of blackmail on Nadeshot or something. I don't know. All jokes aside, Asuna is a good player, but I do question the decision to continue to keep him, but hey, maybe he'll prove everybody wrong, but I've said that before about him. But overall, 100 Thieves, I mean, it's probably make an international tournament. This section's looking lonely, but I just don't see 100 Thieves as a team that could do well internationally. I think it's mainly just make an international tournament. They do have a pretty interesting coaching staff now. Doombro's coming in as, I believe, an assistant coach, and then they have the head coach of TSM, whose name escapes me right now. But they brought in some interesting players from Tier 2, 2 players from the TSM roster, both Vora as well as Timotino. So you bring in the coach, and then you bring in a few players with them. You bring in Doombros to help the coaching staff out. So they do have some good things going for them. I am a little tempted to put them in do well regionally because I do have concerns that they have 3 duelist players now. So someone's going to have to flex. I assume it's going to be Cryo and Asuna as well, but I mean, that combo hasn't worked for them before, but we will see what ends up happening. But I think 100 Thieves, overall, they want to make an international tournament this year. That, to me, is where this team deserves to be. Moving on, we have G2. Now, again, a pretty obvious one here. They want to win an international tournament. This is a team that got very close during VCT Masters Bangkok, making it to the grand final, then losing the closest grand final ever, making top 4 at Toronto, and then, of course, having a pretty unfortunate performance at Champs. It does kind of seem like at Champs, they kind of end up falling off when it comes to the playoff stage. I think they're 0-4 in playoff matches at Champions over the last 2 Champs. So that is a bit of a concern. So it seems like if they're going to win a tournament, it kind of just has to be a Masters. And they started the year really well in 2025 and then kept a very strong momentum, but their peak was definitely early in the year. So they're going to want to avoid that. They're going to want to have to be consistent internationally throughout the entire year. As someone pointed out on the subreddit, I think it's the jerseys. I actually do agree with that Reddit post. They always change to these white jerseys for the international tournaments, but they perform best in the black jerseys with the red. I think just keep those for Champs, man. Just if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I know teams like to do special jerseys for Champs, but listen, I'm a sports fan. I get superstitious. Sometimes it's the jerseys, I swear. Either way, G2, even with the roster move of Jonah P out, Baby Bay in, which I do question. Baby Bay has done well so far on this team. In fact, he did pretty good at the Red Bull Homeground event. But is that the piece that is going to bring this team over the edge? It is yet to be seen. Will Baby Bay be able to keep up a strong performance for an entire season? It's a whole different beast than just performing well during one stage. Whatever the case may be, the goal and the expectation of this team isn't going to change. It's going to be win a international tournament. Moving on, we have C9. Now, I'm honestly questioning C9 a lot recently. Usually they do pretty well at off-season tournaments, and I know it's still pretty early since, like, you know, all the rosters have been formed, but so far they haven't really done great at off-season events. They didn't have a great home ground. Obviously the Sen City Classic was like right after they built the roster, so I'm not really too worried about that tournament. Sentinels winning that one doesn't really tell me much about Sentinels, so C9 not doing well at that doesn't really tell me much about C9 either. And they're a team that has done well regionally for quite some time, but always has the problem of not making international tournaments. So to me, the goal should be make an international tournament. Pretty obvious pick for C9. Again, I don't know how the roster moves are going to end up working out. Zelsis as the IGL, while he has done a lot of mid-rounding in his career as the full IGL, how's he going to do? Is picking up Penny the right choice? Is Oxy going to be able to have a superstar year? Is Zeppa another long-standing member of this team that, even though he's been on a team that has made so many roster changes since he's been on it, has somehow kept his spot on the roster? Is he going to be able to find consistency? Because I think that's been his main problem. He has these really big peaks, but when it comes to being consistently good, he has had his struggles. Is the team that they've built for this 2026 season going to be able to make it international? Well, I think C9 certainly hopes so, but I don't see it for them, but I do think that's the goal. And that is the expectation of the team. And it should be. Again, it should be for every single team to make an international tournament. But for C9, I think it feels especially urgent. Moving on to our last team of the video, we have Sentinels. Now, Sentinels are in a pretty interesting spot. Now, Rob Moore did say during the Sen City Classic that he doesn't expect this team to light the world on fire right away, that this is a long-term project. All these players are signed until 2028. Of course, that doesn't mean that all these players are going to stay on the roster for their entire length of their contract. This is esports, things change all the time. But when it comes to Sentinels management, I'm glad that the expectation isn't sky high for this team like it has in the past. I think they had a lot of expectations last year, and then the roster just ended up having problems, role issues, chemistry issues, you name it, and now they've basically been forced to go through a whole rebuild. Losing Zekin, losing Zelsis, getting rid of Bang, but the players that they've brought in, I actually do think have a lot of promise. Cortesia, I think, is the biggest fish that the team got this offseason. Grabbing him from MIBR, dropping him, I think was a pretty solid move on their part. Basically just trading Zekin for Cortesia. I mean, you could do worse. I think he had a really good year on MIBR. I was disappointed that MIBR got rid of them, but I'm glad that he found a new home in Sentinels. Redux, I think, is going to prove the doubters wrong. Caillou should be a pretty good choice for IGL. And John QT has less pressure on him now. I think he kind of just has to be the mentor for this team. As basically the veteran on this team now, he will have to kind of help usher in this new generation of Sentinels. So with all that being said, I definitely don't think that the expectations are up here. As I said, Rob Moore has said that the expectations are lower this year. But I do think that it would be fair to at least put them here. I think Sen fans are going to expect more than management does. I think Sentinels fans, obviously they like it when their team's really good. They want to see them do well internationally. So I do think that should be the goal. Try to make every international. If they don't, then it's not the biggest deal, but just show a lot of promise, be able to qualify for these international tournaments, beat a lot of teams in your region. I think that should be a fair expectation for the Sentinels team. They do have a lot of talent. I don't think they're going to win a tournament, but are they going to be able to qualify? I think so, especially since the Americas region is basically just a big soup fest. We have these kind of top dogs at the top here, and then we have this middle in the make it international tournament section. I might add a team into the do well internationally section. You know what? I'm going to be bold. I'm going to say NV is actually going to have the goal of make it to every single international. They're going to want to prove that they are the right team to be here, and as soon as Kane Zara is able to come back, I think he turns 18 in like June or something, so we'll see if he ends up playing at all, but I think they would probably bring him back in once he turns of legal age. We will see how that shakes out for NV, but I'm going to be a little bit bold with that pick and put them in that section. And for Sentinels, as I said, I think it's fair to put them there. They do have some pretty good talent on there. So that is my rankings for what are the goals of each VCT VCT Americas team in 2026. A lot of player movement, a lot of change for these teams, a lot of lofty goals, but what are the realistic expectations for each team? I think this is at least a pretty fair board to talk about that. We'll see what ends up happening. Rostermania is not technically over, so do expect some of these teams to make more moves, but 2026 is looking like it's going to be a very, very interesting year for the VCT. Please comment down below, what do you think of these rankings? Where would you put each team? What do you think are the goals for your favorite team, for your least favorite team, anybody in between? Let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.